most important is where the mandate comes from, right? Where the mandate come from, and what socialists and communists and Marxists are advocating for is a dictatorship of the proletariat, where the mandate always comes from the people. And the science behind Marxism and the science behind socialism is take advantage of human nature, right? So capitalism takes advantage of the worst aspects of human nature, greed, and how power can accumulate, and how power can make people psychotic. And they like, we're gonna get the people who have we don't make the most psychotic people who had the most power hungry or the most greedy. They're gonna be top of our society. How does that make sense? How has that worked out? Not great. The idea behind socialism and Marxism, if you get the power to the dictatorship of the proletariat, what the people want, they will look after themselves and their family. So if everyone looked out for themselves and their family, what would they advocate for? They would advocate stuff like healthcare. They advocate for stuff like housing. We want great payment. We want actual payment for our labor. We want our neighbor to be taken care from. So yes, it's a system that you guys may call authoritarian because we want to implement our laws, but it's a system that takes advantage of the best of humanity, where the workers have a say, where we have the means of production. Meanwhile, I keep fucking ranting. This is the story because I'm going to use their term. When I use authoritarianism, I'm going to use it the way they use it. Because as you guys see, I have a fundamental disagreement with how they use it. But for simplicity, yes, let's use the term authoritarianism, right? Which I'm assuming, you know what's funny? You can't, if you ask these people who use this term authoritarianism, like liberals and conservatives do, ask them to define it. I have done it many times. They can't do it. So I can. Like, if you, I think the way they define authoritarianism is unchecked, mean government power, I guess. And I'm legitimately asking, what's your guys' definition of it? Because if you're wealthy and you don't want to pay that tax for Medicare for all, and the government forces you to, that seems authoritarian based on their perspective, correct? There'll always be an authoritarian perspective, but where does authority come from? How many YouTube channels have these conversations, guys? How many people actually explain this? You have every other left YouTube channel. They just lazily go along with it. So I'm at least using it the way that you guys understand, but I'm explaining it, though. So Macron accused authoritarianism, which was very interesting. Because imagine if quote-unquote authoritarian countries did what Emmanuel Macron is doing now. Cutting social media in the midst of an uprising and massive protest. Imagine if Iran did that. Imagine if Venezuela did that. Imagine if Russia, China, aren't these countries considered authoritarian? Right? So now they call Macron authoritarian for this. Wait. So Emmanuel Macron is authoritarian for cutting off social media. What do you call someone that is using their government power to censor people on social media? What do you call a government that is currently torturing and imprisoning an Australian journalist for doing because they engage in journalism? I'm talking about Julian Assange here, who many Americans apparently don't know is not fucking American. They just yeeted someone. They grabbed someone for Australia. I don't know. I forgot exactly where Julian Assange was when he was arrested, to be fair. But he's an Australian citizen. They arrested him. Is that not authoritarianism? Are you guys voting for an authoritarian Joe Biden? Trump supporters, are you voting for an authoritarian Donald Trump? Why? So once again, I agree based on their definition that Emmanuel Macron is an authoritarian, but isn't it your boy too? So I guess I actually start doing reading. You guys, I guess Nick and Nike just be me lecturing. How you guys feel about that? I haven't do that much reading, but you guys don't care about that. Here's the headline. Emmanuel Macron accrues authoritarianism after threat to cut off social media. Emmanuel Macron is facing a backlash after threatening to cut off social media networks as a means of stopping the spread of violence during periods of unrest. So this is why I roll my eyes at people who fall for talking points against Iran, Russia, and China. When you see the footage from France and their police violently and brutally attempting to squash this unrest. They can't because there's so many people. But the police units they have in the territory they do have control of have been absolutely brutal in the treatment of the French people. Been absolutely brutal. So if you've seen this in quote unquote communist and socialist countries, what would we call that? That's what I thought. That's what I thought that was. But here we see it in France, and this is the theme of this show: the rise of authoritarianism in the West. It's not just France. It's not just France. We've seen the increased authoritarian, using their definition, attitudes spread in the Western United States that have been spreading my entire life. You remember the Patriot Act? With Joe Biden helped write, allegedly. And you had Jim Crow Joe pushing the crime bill. And now you have this lawsuit, and this in the court that prove, and they use the language, and CJ covered this a little bit earlier, that we've been saying regarding the coordination between social media sites and Joe Biden and the Biden administration, and them coordinating with corporations to censor dissent. And people completely lost their fucking mind among the COVIDian left. When they were like, oh, it's okay for the government to coordinate with social media to censor people regarding federal government policy. And that when I was like, hold up, wait a second, something ain't right. At what point are we supposed to be okay with that? Which leads to this very interesting case, which shows the authoritarianism, once again, using our definition, of Joe Biden. The judge in Missouri, my home state, versus Biden lawsuit dropped a bombshell of a document to add support to the preliminary injunction. Lots of government defendants. Here are 25 instances where the White House tried to censor Americans in collusion with social media companies. And once again, I do not use the term fascist lightly. But you got the merging of corporation and state, where corporations take directions from the government, very powerful institutions that control public discourse and dialogue. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a very long thread, but I'll just read literally just a few here. And I'll pass to you, Andrew, if you want to chime in on anything here. On January 23rd, 2021, the digital director for the COVID-19 response team contacted Twitter to remove an anti-vaccine tweet by RFK Jr. Now RFK Jr. is challenging Joe Biden. And RFK Jr. is getting interviews pulled from YouTube. You guys see the court? Yeah, I really wish we had YouTube files. You guys see what's going on with our suppression, right? I'll read just a few more. On February 2021, ex-deputy assistant to the president urged Twitter to suspend a parody account associated with President Biden's granddaughter. Now, this is a very interesting case because Glenn Greenwald was talking about. I actually don't have to say. I wonder if I can find it. But if you think that Joe Biden is better character, despite all his crimes, they have a daughter there's a granddaughter that the Biden administration wants nothing to do with, and apparently there was a parody account of this granddaughter because apparently she's like some bastard child. Right, of Hunter Biden, and the Biden administration instructed their administration and the media to never bring that up. Then we'll see if I can find that tweet from Glenn Greenwald, because he actually did a great breakdown of it. But I think that's what they're referring to. Let me see if I can find it. Anyway, I'll continue. I may find it a little bit later. And then here's another one. On February 2021, Twitter suggested a faster method for flagging inappropriate content. The platform was reportedly overwhelmed with a censorship request from the White House, receiving inquiries from 4 different people within the administration in a single day. So there's not like small instances of this. And not like they're using this power sparingly, which many people that defend the Biden administration I've seen, they would say that. They say, oh, the Twitter files is a nothing burger. Yeah, you found few examples of the Biden administration making polite requests. No, No, as we got seen here, and God knows how many requests they made, and many people will say, and I think it's accurate to say as well, that the Trump administration made the same request as well. But anything you want to ask, Andrew? I want to get in here real quick before we move on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you can get a lot through Freedom of Information Act requests, and that top 50 organizations in the anti-disinformation industry, that article that Matt Taibbi and some collaborators wrote and put on his Substack, that gives you more or less all the tools you would need if someone wanted to file a FOIA request, but pertaining to YouTube. YouTube's not going to open up their books, but you have the names and general identifying information of now 50 of the most prevalent private industries, private institutions, think tanks, and whatever other toolkits. These organizations that are calling everybody Russian who doesn't agree with the state narrative and having Twitter and them and the other social media companies censor them. But you could use that as the backbone of the language to design your request for FOIA documents and get that. And another thing that Matt mentioned is that another defense that the government would use, and people who like to just defend Democrats at all costs or defend Republicans at all costs, they'll say, oh, well, these are all private companies. They can do whatever they want. And their terms and conditions say that you're not allowed to say anything that doesn't agree with the government. Matt Taibbi said that it's not completely confirmed, but that it seems like they've seen mention in some of the Twitter files documents that the government agencies like the Department of Homeland Security may have played a role in telling these social media companies how to structure their terms and conditions. So there's a lot more that will come out from all of these, spin off revelations that will come off of the Twitter files that we can gain information about these other organizations. And yeah, it's a complete it's just another example of what you said before: complete and total disdain and disrespect for the notion of freedom of speech. Elon
Yeah,
Musk
before.
has exhibited an identical disregard for free speech, and he was trying to play up that he was a defender of free speech so that more
Absolutely.
people would join his platform and make him money. He can profit off of that image of himself. But yeah, he's anything but. He's making money. He has constructed an image of himself that a lot of people bought into because they don't have a part in a broader people's movement that would give them confidence in their own activities. They have to unplug and put their weird projections and hopes into billionaires and politicians.